Welcome everybody to another episode of Haunted Vermont. It may go into beyond. It all depends on this conversation, especially for what we're about to really dive into. But to help me dive into this weird topic anyway, because let's be honest, when you start talking about it, you can start opening up every type of rabbit hole you can think of. But without further ado, please welcome author, investigator, and everything else paranormal. Please welcome Ronald Murphy Jr. Ronald, thank you for your time.
Hey, thank you, my friend, for having me on your show. It's quite an honor, and you are definitely correct about opening up some rabbit holes. I truly believe over these next 60 minutes we're going to be doing some deep dives down places we weren't expecting to go.
Oh, totally. I feel like even with my notes, it's just not going to do it justice. So we may have to have you come on for a part 2 or something. But anyway, without further ado, Ronald, just to kind of start things off, just tell the listener that may not know who you are per se and your work, like, who is Ronald?
Okay, well, I am in Western Pennsylvania. I'm right outside of Pittsburgh, and I lived here for the majority of my life. I was educated in Pittsburgh at the University of Pittsburgh, where I got my bachelor's degree, and I have my master's degree from Indiana University of Pennsylvania. And I studied literature, and I studied folklore, and I studied archaeology. And I've always been fascinated with the paranormal ever since I've been a kid. My mother, would tell me stories about Bigfoot, and we would read together, and we would watch programs about Bigfoot. So it was a great time to be a kid back in the 1970s. And I kind of carried that love for the unknown with me up into my adult life. And now, as an educated person, I like to explore the paranormal and things that go bump in the night through different lenses. Sociology, psychology, religion, and all these other different types of perspectives that allow us to get a clear view of what we're seeking out there. I kind of like to look at my approach to the paranormal as whenever you go to an ophthalmologist and they have the different lenses and they say, is this better or is this better? And, as you can continue to focus in on that which may never be truly brought into focus, but it allows us to understand a little bit of the cultural context in which these creatures and these kind of phenomenon enter into our reality.
That's a good way to look at it, for sure. So when you started this, Ron, do you mind Ron or Ronald?
Oh, no, that's Ron's fine. No problem.
All right. So I'll just use that moving forward. But so Ron, so basically, at the beginning of this, I guess, for the journey of life, as we know it, kind of thing, before you got into the paranormal, was it stories? Did you have your own experiences? What exactly would you say was the pushover to make you wanting to learn more?
Oh, great. Yeah. So, I grew up in the foothills of the Chestnut Ridge, right? And this has been a hot spot since, the 1960s for, UFO activity. The Roswell crash in 1965 happened in Kecksburg, Pennsylvania, which was not very far from where I was living. And then we had 1975 up through 1977, we had a huge rash of Bigfoot sightings, UFO sightings. And Stan Gordon, who was like the grandfather of the paranormal over here in Western Pennsylvania, he would come onto the radio a couple times a month and talk about the strange things that were going on. And you can imagine as a boy, 7 years old, 10 years old, you start getting this spark in you, that is there really something out there like a Bigfoot, and are there extraterrestrials visiting my humble little town? All these kind of thoughts were instilled within me, and it was kind of like discovering a pirate treasure or something, and you were trying to map it out and find out where the great stuff is buried. And that's the way I always looked at the woods. The woods were a place where I could go in there and enter another realm And if I was lucky enough or unlucky enough, whichever way you look at it, I might be able to encounter something that very few people have uncovered before. And I've never had an experience with a Bigfoot or with a UFO. But as I've progressed as an investigator, I've started to have some very interesting sightings and experiences with things that simply make no scientific sense. I don't believe in some of the things that have happened to me, but it happens. So, I mean, how am I supposed to, make sense of this? Because what is going on is beyond our physics. It's beyond our understanding. What is going on now in the world of the paranormal is borderline, supernatural. We simply don't have the words or the physics to describe what's going on. And I have been lucky enough to get close to these things to the point that I, can write about them and share them about my experiences with other people. And the more we talk about it, the more we have forums like your show, we can have some sort of discussion about what may be going out there, and if enough people get together and we talk about it, we might be closer to the truth.
That last part that you just said, man, I couldn't have even said that better than myself because, I mean, that's true. I mean, so just to give you a little backstory here, I started this podcast like August or podcast. Sorry, let me rephrase this. I started, this whole haunted Vermont thing. Literally like August 26th, 2012. So almost 13 years as of this recording, which is August 10th for the listeners. But so basically, you know, one of the slogans, I guess you could say, that I adapted back in the day, and I'm trying to, bring it back, which is together we can learn, because you know, like you just said, the type of form we got, and whether it be podcasting, in person conferences, whatever, like the more we can discuss it, even if we share our own experiences, especially with somebody who, like me, like when it comes to like this topic that we're getting into, which is, for the record, we're going to be talking about like phantom lights or spook lights for those that may want to know what the hell we're talking about. But anyway, like I know a little bit about it, but I never really fully dived into it because, like I mentioned in the beginning, there's so many rabbit holes. But I feel like if we can come together as a community and grow within the knowledge, then yeah, like you said, we'll be coming closer to the truth. And I couldn't agree with that anymore.
Yeah, right. That's the whole thing. When we talk about things, um, about like Earth lights and phantom lights and things like that, um, very few people are talking about this stuff, right? Because it isn't like you're looking for a Bigfoot or something definitive, right? We're looking for something that is so obscure and so tenuous that there's really no way to discuss it as, we're going to go out and hunt these things or we're going to try to find evidence, because whenever you go out there, you're not necessarily going to find them all the time. It's almost as if they find you. So very few people talk about this subject, and I'm glad that you're doing this.
Well, I appreciate it because I personally want to learn more because of all the stuff that you hear about it anyway. And I think, that's why I wanted to reach out to you to begin with, because like for the record, because I kind of set it off the air, so let's make it on the record now. So you did a book with Small Town Monsters. It's called Lights in the Mist, and first it started as a book, and then like last year, 2024, they did like they call it a short video, I guess, like a short, I guess. But anyway, that is called Phantom Light. So, and you were part of that. So once again, um, that made me want to contact you again. But I think what happened too, from what I gathered as well, is Phantom Light kind of became its own separate entity, because it looks like some of the footage that we see in Phantom Light anyway is actually from their series called Sasquatch Unearthed the Ridge, which I'm assuming the ridge meant like the Chestnut Ridge, I'm assuming.
You're correct, sir. That is right. That's right. And that was really the genesis behind this. I had experienced Earthlights before, but never to this degree and never to the point that it was captured and recorded on video, right? And that was the odd thing about this, that we were doing a special. We were doing a web series on Sasquatch in the Chestnut Ridge area of western Pennsylvania, and as we were there searching for the elusive Sasquatch, we start experiencing an Earthlight phenomenon, and it was to such a degree that it impacted me in such a way that I needed to start writing down ideas and journaling about what I experienced, because I really wanted to make sense of what was going on. So a few months later, I had accumulated enough information to put a book together, and Small Town Monsters thought that this was a good stepping off point to do the Phantom Lights, the UAPs of the forest. And Tyler Hall, who was an essential part of Small Town Monsters, he really took this assignment on and made it his own. So as much as my Lights in the Mist fed into the project, the Phantom Lights became something standalone all by itself, and it really is kind of like a pay-on to the activity that happens in the Appalachian part of America. So yeah, I was honored to be involved in not only writing a book that was published by Small Town Monsters, but also being part of this event that became the Phantom Lights.
Right, right. Yeah, I've actually tried to reach out to Tyler Hall to see if he would be interested to talk about it, because they're at one part in the documentary, and I don't know, Ron, if you can answer it as well, but I know he mentioned something to the effect of like he originally went out there and tried to record, but as nature would have it with technology, all his footage and stuff was corrupted. So I guess I'm just wondering, were you there at that initial time frame when Tyler went out there?
No, it's interesting that you brought that up, because I have a family, I have kids, I have a job, so it's very difficult for me to get out there on overnight expeditions. And this is what Tyler did. And I remember that we met over pizza for dinner the evening after this happened, and he was getting a lot of activity, like he was being able to videotape a lot of things that were going on, seeing a lot of light anomalies, and it was also almost as if these UAPs had an intelligence to them, and as if they were actually playing with the investigators, and all that evidence that he had obtained was corrupted in the file, as if there was an electrical disturbance. I think that's what's happening. I really do. I think that when we talk about the manifestation of these lights, we're talking about such energy involved that it can disrupt and compromise equipment, which is the reason why we don't have fantastic footage of any of this stuff.
Right. Now, real quick, Ron, since you have mentioned it a few times now, I think this would be a good way to add the question. So what exactly is a spook light, or in this case, as you kind of said it, I think 3 or 4 times now, is earth light. So how would you describe them?
Right. So that's really the question. I mean, how do you describe them? How do you label them? And I'm still trying to do that. So I think that we can describe them. It's been going on since probably the very beginning of time. I mean, we probably always have experienced these things. If you look at the Australian Aborigines, part of their dream time, part of their cosmology and their theology behind that involves these lights. And we also have this in Hinduism as well. And a lot of these very beginning kind of religions, these shamanic nature religions, we have the idea that there are manifestations of this energy from the earth itself. So, we look at the Middle Ages, we see things called, fairy lights or the will o' the wisp, and we have St. Elmo's fire. So we know that human beings have been interacting with this phenomenon since the very beginning. And now, you know, we're still seeing it. It's still going on. We still have it in the Brown Mountain Lights. And, in Vietnam, we have these lights as well, too, that people attribute to activities of a dragon. So all around the world, Switzerland and Iceland and across America, Australia, South America, even out in the ocean, people are encountering these lights. And it's not just like a light just flashing on, which in and of itself is kind of, uncanny. But we're dealing with an energy that seems to have an intelligence to it that will actually interact with the witness from time to time.
In what way?
Well, in what I've seen firsthand is almost an unspoken communication, if this makes any sense, as if they will alert you to their presence and then attempt to interact with you in some way, as if it's almost as if they are gifting the witness with the experience. That's the way it seems to me. And it also wasn't a frightening experience in any way, right? It was something that was happening, and it seemed very natural. It seemed as if you were interacting with something that was supposed to be there. It was just taking the form of light energy. And it was one of those things where, like I said, I had no fear. I didn't have this fight or fight response in any way. It was just something that was out there that we were witness to. And, that's what I'm still trying to work out to this very day. What is if it does have intelligence, let's say that, what is the intelligence behind it? And that's that's why we have to have conversations about this stuff, because what is the intelligence driving these earthlights?
Right. That makes sense. And by interaction too, like, would you go? I don't. Would you go as far as saying, like, when people sometimes see it? I'm trying to figure out how a good way to do it. So maybe you might have a better example. But when they appear, right? Sometimes you hear like it looks almost as big as a flashlight. It looks kind of small, like almost like maybe like a headlamp, and it almost bobbing like as if somebody was walking either toward them or away from them. Sometimes I think you guys might have mentioned it, but like in the documentary, what I mean is it was almost like it was staying on the side of the wood lines of you or something, or maybe that might have been something else. But then
no, you're right. You're right on the right track. That's absolutely the case. It appears as if there is a cadence to them whenever they move. I mean, sometimes. What's so fascinating about this is if you are a UFO investigator, or if you're a ghost hunter, or if you're looking for Bigfoot or Dogman or all these kind of things, the ghost lights, the earth lights make sense, because it appears as if these lights are moving as if a human being is behind them, right? Sometimes you see them as if they appear to be lights that are being carried by somebody, even though there's nobody there. So I think that's what kind of spurs on the idea of these being ghost lights. And so many people in so many haunting circumstances report orbs of light. And also with UFOs, there are many people that have reported these small craft seen, weaving through the trees and everything. So as an investigator, I'm kind of, tying this all together. And then people also reported seeing Bigfoot and Dogman and other kind of cryptids in these areas. So I'm thinking, is it possible that these lights can also be responsible for the cryptids that are reported? Is it possible that these lights can now affect the very energy that's in our mind? It allows us to see something that is not there, as if it's projecting into us what it wants us to see. And that is the reason why we have very few pictures of Bigfoot or Dogman is because what we are seeing is an energy projected into us by these things that we call the earthlights.
Now, would you say like that's more of like us getting like a hallucination type of effect, or like how like because
Well,
I think in the documentary, I think I overheard Tyler say something like he felt unbalanced.
yes, yes. You feel whatever these things are happening, even though it's very natural, because it is such an experience. You are put kind of off balance by it. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any logical sense. What you see is should not be happening, but it is happening. And as you try to process all this information, you become very unbalanced. It throws off your equilibrium in many ways. Not only philosophically, not only that way, but also in a very real way as well too. It makes you dizzy. It makes you kind of nauseated at times as well. And one of our investigators that was with us as we were as we were filming the Sasquatch Unearthed the Ridge, his name was Tom Mihawk. He actually was approached by one of these lights about the size of a basketball, and it was actually radiating light so that it was projecting light as it moved along the ground to the point that it was, casting shadows and everything like that. And it approached him, and he got about an arm's length away from it. And as he reached out, the thing vanished. But before that happened, he seems to have been affected by that in some sort of physiological way, because right after that event, he had his retina actually kind of, blow out, for lack of a better word. Pressure built up behind it. So it seems as if that experience that he had, the witnessing of this earthlight and this near interaction, caused him some sort of physical trauma from it as well, as if that experience affected his body as well.
That's crazy. Yeah, I don't even remember hearing about that. But then again, I just started that series too, so maybe I haven't gotten to that point or something. I think I'm on like episode 3.
Yeah. Actually, it doesn't show up in the video. It doesn't show up. It doesn't show up even in my book. He does appear in my book, and he actually wrote an entry in one of the chapters in my book about his experience. But the physicality of what happened was not after was not after I wrote the book. I should have included it, and maybe I'll come back with a volume 2. But yeah, that's kind of like a first thing here on your show that's being announced. So you have a little bit of a foreknowledge about this stuff.
Wow. Well, that's always good and appreciate it. But yeah, volume 2, man, I would be looking for it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so it's good. Like I said, it's good to have these shows like this because your listeners are hearing something that other people don't get to hear about, right? So
That's right.
so I can say that if you read the book, if you watch the movie, you know that there's some strange things out there that's going on. But I can also tell you from one of the witnesses that his experience seemed to have had some sort of physical kickback within his body as well.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, if you talk about UFOs as well too, you talk about like abduction cases and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Even though he was not abducted, he's still having the same kind of reciprocal damage that happens whenever people are discussing being taken aboard an alien spacecraft.
That's interesting. Huh. So, okay. Interesting. Huh. I'll have to make a note of this too. So, where was I gonna go with this too? Because you just brought up some interesting stuff. Let's see. Oh, so you said talking about reaching out and it vanished. Because that was actually how I was gonna end. What I was saying was there was also reports of like when people see these lights, they happen to like, as they approach them, they disappear. And you just put it with him. the light was like arm's length, and as he reached out, that's when it disappeared. Uh, I'm trying to remember where in the documentary it is, so you'll have to help me out, Ron. Is there was some sort of talk about it was almost to like the environment temperature change. It was like cold or warm or something.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely. So it appeared as if the environment around you, the very air itself, was electrically charged. In this one case that I had,
Mm.
and it seemed as if there was like static electricity in the air, as if the environment was preparing for the entry of these lights. So, there's another way of thinking about this too. Are these lights that we see portals as well? Is this the means by which creatures, entities that we call Bigfoot and such, are able to go in and out of our world? That's something else to think about, right? And again, we have to have discussions about this kind of thing. But whenever I saw this particular Earth light years ago on a completely different case, it appeared as if something not from our world was able to enter our world through this particular Earthlight that we saw.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, before I actually, you brought up another thing that well, I guess we could call it a rabbit hole. But before we go down that rabbit hole, I want to go back a little bit, which is you were talking about the air and like the change in that way. In your study, Ron, I guess, have there been any similarity to like the way the weather is? Like, and what I mean by that is like, is it dry? Is it wet from rain? Like, have you seen any type of weird similarity when it comes to the weather?
See, that's a great question. And no, I have not. I've encountered Earth lights in the middle of summer, and I've also encountered them in the fall as well too. Tyler Hall, who made the film, was encountering them whenever there was still snow on the ground. So in the wintertime. So it seems to be an omnipresent type of phenomenon. And I know whenever we talk about the Middle Ages and the Renaissance, people were reporting seeing this St. Elmo spire, which is this probably more reminiscent of ball lightning, and that usually happens preceding a storm or immediately after a storm. So it does seem that there's consequences to be made whenever there's certain types of weather conditions. But I think that when we talk about that kind of stuff, we talk about these lights appearing under weather conditions. These are explainable phenomenon. This has something to do with, like I said, ball lightning or some sort of atmospheric discharge. I think when we talk about what our subject is today and what makes it so overwhelming and eerie and odd is that there is no way to explain these things away from an environmental perspective.
Right, right. And I think you also gave it the term like an elemental presence as well or something. But real quick, what I was gonna say too is so you just mentioned portals and Bigfoot and stuff like that. So here we go. Here's that rabbit hole where half of the crowd will tell you that there's no supernatural aspect behind Bigfoot, and it's like pretty much 100% an actual human. Like there's no like spiritual ability. Whereas you get the other half where they talk about like in this sense, they must be stepping in a portal because they follow the tracks out into the middle of the field the field, and all of a sudden they just vanish. But then you hear reports where like, well, these Bigfoot must be re-stepping in their tracks and going backward that way, so that way they're not. It doesn't act like they are leaving the area. It's almost like they just went straight back in or something like that and then vanish that way, which I find that hard to believe because if it's snow and you're gonna re-step back into the same exact trackway that you just literally just put your foot in and lift it up, and then if you're going to re-step in that same exact track and then lift back up, you're gonna almost see like that double print effect. Whereas I don't know if people really talk about a double print effect in that way either?
No, no, I know what you're talking about. Sure. So that's our human minds trying to wrap around something that should not happen, right? Tracks should not just appear and disappear. So, and I'm glad you brought up about the idea of the elementals. I'm at my point right now in my research and in my investigations that I think that the realm of the elemental must be discussed because we have things appearing and disappearing. We have things that are moving without any kind of, without any kind of regard to our known physics. And I think we talk about these things. Sometimes we talk about these Bigfoot sightings and such. They're acting in such a way that it doesn't make sense that they're flesh and blood. So it's coming into my focus that things that we talk about, certain types of alien encounters, ghostly encounters, Bigfoot, Dogman, all this stuff, can relate back to the origin of the elemental. That what we are seeing is related to the realm of the Fae. And a lot of people don't like to talk about this kind of stuff because it seems kind of silly. But I am telling you as a researcher that I do believe that the genesis for the majority of the paranormal activity that we are talking about stems from a realm that can only be defined as the realm of the fairy.
Would that also be considered? Well, this is why I'm asking you, I guess, because I don't know. And would the realm of the fairies, is that similar to what you would call the Goblin universe?
Bingo, you've hit the nail on the head, right? There's no other way to describe it, right? It is something beyond our comprehension, but for what it is, it appears to be a realm of being that coincides with our existence. So it's kind of like, I guess, an onion. Whenever you peel it, if you peel off a thin enough layer, it's translucent. You can actually see through it. And I think every now and then we get close to this dividing line between our world and their world, and we can not only see through it, but there's also the possibilities that there's pores, portals or whatever you want to call them, that allows this other world to bleed into ours.
That's interesting. Yeah. You kind of hear about that. It's kind of like with the ghost realm with, actually, this would be perfect anyway, but, pretty soon we're going to be getting into the fall, which is, quote, right when the veil of the world is start to get thin and, your beloved ones that are no longer with us have the chance to come back and walk the earth again, which is kind of like the, All Hallows Eve and Day of the Dead and stuff. Is it similar to like that, would you think?
Yes. So, if we would go back 2,000 years, whenever Halloween was then known as Samhain, which means summer's end, people wanted their loved ones to visit them because they had, they were on the other side. And in that other world, they would have information that we would not have access to, possibly even be able to divine the future, right? But the problem, my friend, is this, is that whenever that veil is the thinnest, it allows our loved ones to come into our world, but other things also can come on over. And one of the things they feared was the idea of the fairy. Before there was the Judeo-Christian term of demon that was now influencing languages and worldviews, there was the notion of the fairy realm. And fairies were the mostly, ambivalent. They could be very chaotic and insidious, but they could also be beneficial. You just didn't know what the nature of the fairy was, and which was, coming over into our world. So it's okay to have a loved one come on over, but you do not want a fairy to follow you home because all hell could break loose. So people would start dressing in disguise so that fairies would not know who they were, so they couldn't attach themselves to them. So that is probably the genesis of dressing up during Halloween. But yeah, absolutely. So even up through the Renaissance and into early modern times, people would believe that the dead resided in the world of the fairy. They came from that. They go to that same place, and oftentimes people would have fairy encounters, and during this encounter, they would see their dead loved ones there as well. So these kind of mythologies, if you will, would now kind of inform other religions, Anglican Church and all this other kind of stuff. So, even before the development of those kind of religions, we have, during the 1600s, we have people writing about the nature of the fairy, and some people claimed that they were fallen angels. That's what we were seeing. We were seeing those angels that have fallen from grace, and now they assume these kind of nearly human aspects, and now they haunt us as fairies. So King James, King James, before he had, the Bible written, his King James version of the Bible, in which every good Protestant boy and girl has access to, he wrote a treatise called Demonology. And part of his demonology was to describe fairies and to kind of get to the nature of what they are. And he was leading to the aspect that these indeed were fallen angels, and they were closer to demons than anything.
I remember going back to your little chat about the disguise and stuff. I remember, when I was reading about like the origins of Halloween and stuff, because I was born in October, so
Nice.
so I'm always like 24/7 representing the Halloween vibe. But anyway,
That's very nice.
yeah. So, but when I remember when I read that, when it did come time for the spirit to walk the earth and to distract the other beings, I will say, they would throw on masks to basically, like you said, disguise themselves, which I thought was very fascinating because I'm trying to remember the word in that I may have read, but it was something to the effect of like it helped protect not just you, but it protected like your deceased loved one or something. Maybe that's what you meant by the whole like not getting attached. But yeah, it would like it threw them off, and that way it like you could like walk them. Oh God, this is where I forget right now, but it was like it threw off that entity so that it allowed them to, I guess, maybe go back. I forgot the lack of term.
No, you do a great job. That's absolutely the case, right? So these entities that come on over with our loved ones, I guess we could say these non-human spirits that come on over with the spirit of our departed ones, right? They come on over to our world, and oftentimes they are represented as points of light, as kind of like living flame. And that's why we have jack-o'-lanterns to this day. Now, before the pumpkin came, from the New World, people over in Ireland, the Druidic peoples, the Celts and the Gauls, they would cut out things they had on hand, like turnips and such, and put a little piece of coal in there that would burn. Right. So if a spirit was moving around and looking for a house to come in to haunt, they would see this light outside, and they would assume that was another spirit that already claimed possession of that house, and then they would move along. So even from 2,000 years ago, before Samhain became Halloween, we have this idea that spirits moved about as forms of living light.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, like I said, it's been a while since I really dived into the book that I had, but yeah, I was just trying to go off memory. But yeah,
no, you did a great job.
Yeah, I'm proud of myself.
Yes, that's right. Give yourself a pat on the back, my friend.
All right. Well, yeah, I don't know if anybody heard that, but yeah, I would have gave myself a pat on my back. But So I guess this would be a one of those like another conversation with you, but real quick, Ron, I guess since we brought up fairies, so I guess it is just for a reminder for me too. But so you mentioned there's good and the bad fairies, stuff like that. So is it the fairy that are said to try to lure you to your doom?
Right, sure. That's right. So, fairy lights was a term that is still used in the British Isles of this day. But the will o' the wisp was these lights that you have to be wary because if you're outside at night and you see these lights, people naturally like to follow light sources. But oftentimes they would take you into swamps or into moors where you were never seen of from again. So that's the reason why we do, when we see lights, we don't necessarily know what to do about them because they could be very dangerous or they could be benign. It's just that you don't know until you're in that situation.
Right, that makes sense. Yeah. So I guess I want to go back to something that you mentioned before, but I just have it in my notes right now. But and then we'll move on a little bit. But you were talking about how lights can sometimes appear with Bigfoot and Dogman and any type of really cryptid that you kind of hear about with these lights. Anyway, some of the reports that I've hear from people and just from even other podcasts where it's podcast that where eyewitnesses share their encounters and stuff like that. But you hear sometimes where these lights appear right before like a Bigfoot incident, or it after the Bigfoot incident had occurred. Now, and I'm only bringing up Bigfoot because unfortunately, like I know Dogman, but I don't know Dogman, if that makes sense. So in this case, like I would know more about Bigfoot than I would Dogman. But so I guess um I think we kind of brought it up, but just for maybe just in case. But how would you sum up like the light coming with the sort of cryptid? Like, is it them like you were saying, like manifesting like this portal to step through them? Is it like fairy like guardians of the cryptid? Like how does that work? I guess.
Yeah, well, we simply do not know, right? So what I do is I take folklore from around the world and try to describe it. I do know that in the British Isles, fairies have something that they employ called glamour, which is a term we still use today, which is a form of taking a different shape. So shape shifting is a
Hmm.
fundamental attribute of the fairy realm, right? That these energies can assume different forms and likenesses. Up in Scotland, up in the Highlands, we have something called the Grey Man, which can appear to be anything from fog up to the size of a giant, 12 feet tall, hair-covered giant. And also in the Himalayas, in that part of the world, the Yeti is oftentimes seen in the religious culture as something that's far more spiritual than it is physical. In the same way with the Native Americans and the First Nations people of the United States and Canada. Oftentimes, that which we call the Sasquatch is more of a spiritual type of being that is more, from the other side than it is, some sort of forest-dwelling ape-like creature. So we have to keep that in mind as well too. That these religions and these mythologies from around the world see the idea of fairy as something that can shapeshift, and appear differently than what they really are. But it all comes back to the idea that there's an intelligence energy that's from the earth itself. Now, before we wrap this up, I also want to point out that oftentimes in my encounters that I've had and in listening to other people speak, oftentimes there is sounds that that happens right before an experience, whether it's a earthlight experience or a manifestation of a Bigfoot or a Dogman. I was watching Chad Lewis speak in Dallas, Texas, a couple years ago at the Dogman Festival down there, and he said that oftentimes before there's the sighting of a Wendigo, there's a terrible crash that breaks the air. So I've experienced the sound of what sounds like tinkling, almost like wind chimes out in the woods. But it also seems, from the more research that I do, that there's other things that are experienced on different types of sound waves as well, which kind of, it's kind of strange because, the more beautiful the sound, the more kind of benign the experience is. But if you have something that's very, out of tune and some sort of cacophony that makes you uneasy, the more uneasy kind of experience you're going to have.
That makes sense. Yeah, and I'm actually kind of glad that you kind of segued right into the sound, because that's actually where I was going to go next, is the sound. And within that documentary, you guys had like a little recording of wind chime that you kind of repeatedly played, and just to kind of see what happened and stuff. And on my notes here, I forgot to rewatch these, but I wrote something down. Well, two things, because I forgot if it was supposed to be separate or if they somehow connected. But I guess that's why you're here, Ron. I have healing and something about earthquake.
Yeah, so absolutely. So if we are to say that these are intelligent energies, right? Energy has waves, it has frequency. And I was honored enough to be a part of the show Beyond Skinwalker Ranch, who took out, thousands of dollars out into the field where I've experienced this sound and these energies before. And you can watch it. It's the Kecksburg episode, and I'm on the second part of the episode. And they took a lot of gear out into the field, and they found out that the environment was producing a frequency, and whenever the frequency was played back, it sounded like wind chimes. So that not only freaked me out, but it gave me a lot of validation of what I've been researching and experiencing was indeed true. So, again, we're going down a whole other rabbit hole here, but it appears to be that there is some sort of symbolic relationship or some sort of, I really don't know how to explain it, but it seems to be a relationship, a symbiotic relationship, I guess I should say, between the world around us and ourselves, where we feed off of each other, and it comes out to be that it's all frequency based.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. So before I continue about the sound thing, I just want to point out for the listeners and for Ron here. So there's a episode that is out now for everybody to listen to as of this recording, and it's entitled "It Looked Like a Flashlight." It was my coworker's story about a possible spook light or phantom light, because it looked just like a flashlight, as we kind of mentioned throughout this conversation, how these lights look like it's a human being with a flashlight, a headlamp, like, something. I've even heard like something like a lantern even. But anyway, going back to why I'm bringing it up is because I think at the beginning of this, I said Haunted Vermont, not Beyond Haunted Vermont, or it could lead to that. But anyway, the point to this is, Ron was just saying, like, if there's a volume 2, maybe my coworker here can reach out and share her experience too, for if you wanted to start a volume 2 anyway. Cause,
oh, my son, I would absolutely love that. Yes, sir.
All right, awesome. I'll let her know. But yeah, it's a very interesting take, because her experience happened in the area that is known as the Bennington Triangle around Vermont, in the south end of Bennington, where all the weird missing people have gone. There's weird lights and there's weird Bigfoot. And out of this recording too, it's been so crazy that my local friends and the paranormal team have actually went somewhere to a house call, you could say, somewhere around that general area because of a possible Bigfoot uh, activity. And I'm only saying that just because of the video that they have posted out in the public, and that's as far as I'm going to say because I don't know anything else more because they got to be hush hush about it. But it's just interesting because there's also an old story that I've heard before she had told me this her encounter of this light, that one of the stories that I used to got brought up with, especially going into this realm of the unknown, was some of these strange lights have appeared to the hikers one time where it spooked them so bad that they ran back down the mountain, and I think it was because they saw these mysterious lights that were coming towards them, and I think that's what freaked them out. Probably because they noticed that it wasn't like a flashlight and a person walking. Which I actually think you guys actually mentioned that too somewhere. I think it was you. Maybe it was like the actual ridge. I don't know about the phantom lights per se, but I'm pretty sure I heard one of you guys say something like, "Yeah, this light looked like it was supposed to be like somebody right here on the trail, but there's nobody."
Yeah. Right, and by bringing up that stuff, by talking about the things that you just did and talking about the things that I just said, it shows how similar these encounters are, and that's what links this all together. Because no matter where you're at, there is some sort of, I guess, framework and context by which these things appear. So it's not like it's happening and it doesn't happen to anybody else. This is a worldwide phenomenon that has similar patterns.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of similarities. The only thing though is going back to your Earthlight phrase. I just want to say you were talking about minerals too, so we could say quartz, limestone, like those type of minerals that give off the energy. So do you think that is the energy that is producing these lights? I don't think we talked about this yet, so I think that's a good way to look at it. Is so
Right.
like these type of energy, yeah.
Yeah, well, I think whenever we talk about, when we go into like ghost investigations, you say that they need to draw energy from something for manifestation. So, whether it's running water or railroad tracks or batteries or whatever, it seems
Hmm.
as if they have to draw something from the environment in order to take shape or in order to interact. Well, I mean, that might be what's going on with this phenomenon as well, that it uses, environmental components as a battery from which to manifest into energy. It's very possible. We look at one of the most famous alien abductions in United States history, which is the Betty and Barney Hill case that took place up there in New Hampshire. Well, gosh darn it, New Hampshire is the granite state. So we have a lot of, geological reasons why these things might happen in those areas. And a lot of hauntings take place in castles that are made up of limestone and other kind of minerals. So it seems as if that's the battery which allows this spark to happen.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah. Once again, as you were saying, like with the Earthlight and the elemental again, so they're the factor right there. And I guess I'll just put a nice little bow on it like that because I don't know how much more we can kind of shine on that. But I do want to go into. I want to go back to the sound real quick. So, and I don't know if you have looked into this, Ron, but it's not. I think this would actually make a great investigation to make a volume two of this for you. And that is, I know you guys, going back to the wind chime sounds, I know you guys have played that and stuff, but have anybody actually saw that? Because, I think this might actually be why I have the note healing, now that I think about it. But have anybody tried experimenting with these spook lights or earth lights in your case here? I'll keep it with how you call them, Ron. But has anybody experienced with these earth lights like the singing bowls.
It's a good thing you brought this up because as I've experienced this more and more, I've decided that I'm going to take up Reiki, and as part of the Reiki involvement, which definitely is, the idea of moving energies around, I'm going to look at Reiki healing through frequency and through sound. So that, my friend, you seem to be rather omniscient about this kind of thing, because as my life is taking me down this path, I'm now going to integrate myself into the idea of using, natural energies out there in the form of healing. So I guess I will have to let you know, and 6 months from now or so, how my path is taking me on that. But yes, I think what you're saying is extremely pertinent, and that is something that I'm going to dive into next.
That's awesome, man. I can't wait. Yeah. Because as I was watching, I was just like, oh, man, this is interesting. And then, I was just like, oh, the singing bowls. Like, because I kind of, I kind of got into them last year a little bit. Like, I knew of them previously, but I guess for me now with this unknown factor is I was invited to a investigation last year with the local team that I know. And we probably had like 2 or 3 singing bowls that night. And it was really, really cool to see what they were doing with the environment, which was inside of the Wilson Castle where we were investigating. And that's why I wanted to bring it up with even these lights too, because it's a really interesting phenomenon for sure, but it's like in your case, how is it going to react to something like that with the vibrational sound that
Right.
carries and everything else? Yeah.
Well, vibrational frequency. I think that's absolutely the case. And unfortunately, because my time is limited today, I'd be honored to come back on your show. But we'll definitely do a part 2 to this. Like I said, we have very, very more rabbit holes to explore. But I definitely don't want to cut this off early. But unfortunately, life gets in the way every now and then. So yeah, we'll have to come back and have a different show on that topic, which is, like I said, another rabbit hole to go down.
For sure, Ron. Well, it's been an honor to talk to you nonetheless. And I mean, yeah, I think that's a great way to just end it for right now is let's see where your research takes you from now. So yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, it was a great honor to be on with you, my friend. You've been very kind to me, and like I said, anytime we'll have to reschedule, and I'm sorry, we'll have to make another schedule, and we'll do this all over again.
Oh, for sure, man. I love talking to you. But before you go, Ron, if for anybody that is interested in your work, besides like what we were talking about, because you do other stuff too, like Dogman. You did a Dogman book. You did like a haunted cemetery or something. But anyway, where can people just check out your work?
Go to Amazon. That's where everything is at right now. You go to Amazon and look up Ronald L. Murphy Jr., or you go to my website, which is www.ron dash. So it's ron dash cryptoguru.com. RON dash CYRPTOGURU.com, and you can get my books there as well.
Oh, that's awesome, Ron. So again, there you go, everybody. Yeah, like Ron just said, we have a lot more to discuss here, especially later on. So yeah, I can't wait to dive back in. But for everybody else listening, like I always say, keep your eyes open, man, because you just never know what you're gonna see. You're gonna see a spook light, maybe you might see a new UAP, which we haven't even dived into fully yet, and that could be on the next one. But until then, everybody, you know what to do. Report back.